A young woman causes a fatal car accident on the same night a mysterious planet appears in the sky. Years later, she still struggles with her guilt. This one is an indie sci-fi drama co-written and starring Brit Marling, so join us as we visit another Earth. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast, and today we're looking at a movie called Another Earth, which came out in 2011. We'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and of course if you're enjoying the show, do hit the like button on YouTube. It helps out a bunch if you do, and if you want to support everything, you can do that over at Patreon and get some bonuses, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So Another Earth is a smaller indie sci-fi movie where, as the title would imply, another Earth just kind of appears in the sky one day, and that's kind of like weaving in and out of the plot, as there's like a sort of central story about our main character who is in a drunk driving incident that kills someone, and it's kind of about her trying to rehabilitate and get back into her life after a few years of prison, and that's kind of what the story follows. So it's definitely a character sci-fi film. It's all about kind of like, it's there to sort of go along with the themes that the movie's doing, which is that of guilt, regret, of the path not taken, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to get into.
I was surprised by, from the title of Another Earth, how sci-fi tangential this is. Like, yes, the sci-fi elements are there. Yes, it is something that like plays a part in the plot, but it is so like, it would take one draft to completely remove all sci-fi elements from this movie, and it would just be a straightforward like character piece.
Yeah, but you shouldn't, because that's what makes it interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. It adds something to it. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's very much not crucial to the plot. It's
all the flavor, though. I think if you take all that away, then you're just kind of like, it wouldn't necessarily be bad, per se, or you know, it's not like it wouldn't have anything going for it, but so much of the aura that the movie has that it's going for, so much of the atmosphere that it's trying to create. Like, you know, it loves those shots of her walking down the street and you can see the other Earth in the sky. It loves those visuals. And it looks good, to be fair, so I'm not even criticizing that. But it loves to cut to those shots. So,
yeah.
You know, the idea that the weight of the world's looming over at any given point is just, you know, such a simple visual to put on. Well, I say simple. Some effects are obviously involved in pulling it off, but simple in terms of composition and kind of idea.
Right.
So... yes, but I actually saw this when it came out in theaters back in 2011. Right in deep in my, I'm going to go try see smaller movies at the cinema, not just the big ones, and deep in that era.
A snob.
I was still seeing the big ones, but sometimes the smaller ones are a lot more interesting, and it's nice to feel like you're trying stuff that isn't going to make billions of dollars without breaking a sweat.
This came up with the Fox Searchlight logo, like which obviously is their independent label, and I feel like, obviously I haven't seen that deep into like the real dredges, but anytime Searchlight shows up, I usually have a decent time with it. It's usually an okay time at the very least.
Yeah, it tends to be either they've found an indie film that they're going to distribute, or I don't even know, like other methods. Something becomes Fox Searchlight and not just like a traditional Fox type of movie. Or I guess now it's 20th Century Studios. Is Searchlight even still a thing that since Disney bought them? I have no idea.
I don't know. I have no idea. It does. I pulled up their wiki and it does say Disney era, so I assume that it's continuing.
Well, good. It should, because I don't know if Disney have an equivalent where, like, you know, they have this like, you know, distribution method for smaller movies. I don't think they have
it's called Disney Plus.
No, that's lots of bland tie-in shit to bigger franchises. So, yeah, I mean, the premise is straightforward. Obviously, I'm dodging some spoilery things, which we'll get into in a bit. But had you even heard of this one before I put it on the schedule?
Honestly, I was about like 2 minutes away from messaging you and making sure I had the right film, because this one, it was so small, and like, not to bash the movie or anything like that, but it it definitely has an amateurish feel to it. That as I was watching the movie, I'm like, is this the right one, or did I just get like a student film at the beginning here? But no, once it came up with like all the Searchlight stuff, and I noticed, what's his name? I don't know how to pronounce it. Mapother.
Yeah, William Mapother. He's been on Lost. He's been on some other things.
Right. Yeah, I looked him up and I was like, oh, okay, no, we have real actors. Sorry, it's a real movie. Never mind. Continue.
Yeah, it's definitely like a smaller, low budget movie that's got like a really sort of gritty, grainy look to it, and it's doing some stuff that definitely feels very indie in its presentation. Like the way it likes to edit, the shooting style feels very of its time in terms of, and I feel weird saying that about something that came out in 2011. It doesn't feel that long ago, but it does feel like the type of movie that came out with this budget at that time, for better and for worse, which maybe we'll get into. So yeah, now Brit Marling, who's the lead actress here, she's also the co-writer of the movie. And I actually kind of rediscovered her work because she did a show on Netflix called The OA, which kind of came out of nowhere and was endlessly interesting, right? It was very, and you can sort of tell, I can sort of remember back to this movie and go, I can see some of the same creative voice between these two things. And then she had another show on FX just like a year or two ago called the Murder at the End of the World, I think that was the full title.
I think that's right. Yeah.
But I enjoyed both of those to some extent. The OA, I think, would be my favourite of the two of those shows. But there's definitely a tone and a way of telling a story. There's I don't want to say a shtick per se, because that sounds negative, but there's definitely like a ethereal vibe that she and her collaborators tend to go for.
Yeah, I have not seen the OA, and I never intended to, which led me to a video that was basically just gushing about like how cliffhanger at the end of the second season and all this stuff. And I was like, they were showing clips, and I was like, I'm picking up a lot of an early version of the OA in this movie. Like that same sort of vibe, the same sort of way that it's approaching these more headier concepts.
Yeah, it likes to kind of like put in some like mysticism and sci-fi, but it does it in kind of like a, like it's a sort of thing where if you hate like indie movies where they talk about ideas but don't necessarily show a whole lot, you're going to be frustrated. But I think there is a way of doing that where it is still very satisfying because it's all about just believing in the ideas as opposed to, having. But I mean, and to be fair, the OA actually has a lot of spectacular visuals in it as well. But it's definitely suggestive, and it's definitely good, doing a lot of not just straight up literal things. Right. So, with all that said, I just wanted to get the connections to her other work out of the way. I've seen this obviously years before that stuff though, and this does feel like a sort of stepping stone on the path to those other things that she's been involved in. So, without further ado, David, what did you think of Another Earth?
It's a tough one for me. I liked watching it. I was never at any point here thinking like I was waiting for the movie to end, or I was thinking that it was poorly made or anything like that. I think it's a decently well-made film. Like you said, it does have a lot of low budget sort of feel to it, and they have to kind of just make certain things work for themselves rather than relying on, oh, okay, we can fix that in post or anything like that. I like the characters. I like the way they're coming out there. I think my biggest problem I had with it really came when the movie ended, and I felt like there was so much more that could have been explored here. There was so much more that I felt the movie was kind of promising with the idea of there's this other Earth, and without spoiling too much aspects of this other Earth, that when we hit the ending, I kind of felt like we only just scratched the surface of it. We looked at the most basic level of interest in this, and we could have done so much more on top of that. It's still a good character piece, but from a sci-fi examining this sort of idea perspective, I felt very cheated out of a very interesting concept. So I guess overall I left feeling a little bit disappointed, but the movie itself, like being made wise, it's still good. It's still a solidly made film.
Yeah, it's interesting to put it like that. I guess maybe it's all about what the movie's actually trying to do with that, like what with the concept versus what you want out of that concept. this movie was never going to be about exploring Earth 2, to just give it a name, right? It was never going to be about that. It was never going to be about the science fiction side of it. It was always, I mean, the movie's always about how does this make the characters feel? The idea that there's a second Earth up there, what does that mean? Well, does that make them feel empty? Does it make them feel maybe the opposite? Does it make them feel like, oh, maybe there is more to life if there is another world there, kind of thing? So it's weird because I don't think the movie's perfect by any means. I do. There's definitely little bits and moments of, like just like a clunky bit of acting there from like a side character or little moments like that. And there's definitely some moments where I'm going, oh, this is an indie-rific movie where it's doing the indie gimmicks of the time. And there's definitely moments where I was kind of not even rolling my eyes, just kind of smirking a little bit. I'm like, okay, maybe when I first saw this in 2011, some of this stuff wasn't as much of a trend in these small films yet, so it never stuck out to me in the same way. But now that we're, time's removed, it's 14 years later, you kind of recognize the trends in hindsight a little bit, and you're like, oh, okay, I can kind of see some of the rough cracks around the edges, I suppose.
Yeah. There's one house in this movie, and all I could think the entire time we were doing it was, whose family member owns this house? Like, it just struck me as that level of indie, where it's like, we weren't scouting for locations, we were using what we had.
Yeah, which is fine, and if they've got the story to make it work. I think I like the movie still quite a bit, because I think the atmosphere and the overall kind of vibe of it is just really nice. It... I don't want to call it dreamlike. I don't think that's quite the right word to describe it, but there's definitely kind of like a ethereal optimism to it, which I think, and that's in spite of the fact that the character's kind of depressed because there's this big crushing guilt of what she's been involved in and the inciting incident in the story.
I not in the ethereal aspect of it, but the optimism aspect. It reminded me a lot of Francis Ha, which we did over on Collector's Cut. Just kind of this like drifting, sort of going through life kind of feeling, just trying to make something work out.
Yeah, I can see that. I do think that in spite of loving the ideas that it has, and in spite of, I think the performances of at least the central couple of characters being very good. Some side characters less so, but I think that the main two are pretty solid. There's definitely some things that feel a little bit undercooked. Although for me that was never so much the Earth, like the sci-fi stuff, because to me that was always filling the role that it was meant to fill in the movie. For me it was more like, oh, this like change in direction, a character feels a little bit like we've not quite earned that, or maybe we're going down a path that feels just a little bit forced for the sake of the point that it wants to make later. And I was feeling just a little bit of a disconnect there, where I can still appreciate it because ultimately the points that we're trying to make by the end, like, I'm like, yeah, no, I see why you want to make that point. I just don't know if you quite convinced me that we got from A to B to C necessarily.
Yeah. You made the point earlier that the sci-fi elements were never going to be about exploring this other Earth, exploring all the other stuff, but more so of how people are reacting to it. But I also feel that didn't go as far as I wanted it to either. Like, I don't know. There's a thing whenever you explore things in the way of like aliens, discovering other life in the universe or stuff like that, where like some movies play it off as just like, okay, we're going to focus more on like the governmental side of things, so it doesn't feel like a big deal. But some movies play it off of the people and like, how does this change our fundamental understanding of our place in the universe to know that there are other things out there? This one, I felt like it tapped on the door. It was doing the moments. It was doing the moments that felt like contact with an alien race, or at this point with the other Earth. But then when it came time to show how the character was really understanding it and making them feel and doing that sort of stuff, I felt like it always pulled back. It never quite went the full distance of showing that, because it was much more interested in dealing with the interpersonal stuff rather than the larger aspects of it. It wasn't until we hit the very ending of it where I feel like they actually did something and took it to its natural conclusion. But by that point, we had given up like 5 or 6 false leads before that point.
I mean, I never had that feeling, because I don't think this movie was ever going to do that. I think that's a case of what you're expecting or wanting from the just the concept on paper versus what the movie actually was ever trying to do. So I just, I don't know, that side of it to me feels like it's because it's always going to, this movie was always going to be about the analogies and the metaphors of how it like feels for her to have these possibilities in the sky, and like the idea of looking up there and what she's going through, and the idea that her life is pretty miserable and it's not going the way she wanted it to go, and dealing with like the guilt of what she's done and trying to find some sort of path forward. Like, that was always going to be the central focus of the movie, and all the sci-fi stuff is there in service of exploring that, and how, you know, it's the pale blue dot. It's like how humble we feel in the scale of the grand universe, kind of thing. It's going for that kind of feel. And you never hear the Carol Sagan speech, but there's actually moments in this movie where she's like walking around and they play what it sounds like real like interview pieces with people talking about space and astronomy.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no confirmation either way on that, but it definitely feels like it's vague enough that we're not talking about this specific movie, and it feels like it's being pulled from something else. Yeah,
which is fine, because I get the vibe they're going for. They're going for this kind of like, you know, the mystery of space, but not on a scientific level per se. More on this idea of well, you know, it's so vast and empty and we're life here, so does that have some meanings and significance and so on?
Yeah, the movie opens up with a collection of pictures of from the Voyager probe of Jupiter, and our main character saying like, I'm so entranced by its swirling and dancing around and all that sort of stuff. And I feel like that is the exact vibe that carries over the whole way through. Of
it never gives up that.
We're not talking about the scientific aspect of like, oh, the storm on Jupiter is actually caused by X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, just look at how pretty it is. Look at how magnificent it is.
Yeah, so it's about the almost the magic of space, without ever treating it like it is magic, but just kind of like, how does this make us feel, as opposed to anything else. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very specific flavor, and I think it's one that still mostly works for me. But like I said, there's some cracks around the edges, and there's definitely like you know, it's just over 90 minutes, and I think you can feel that they got to that finish line and they got everything they need to tell their story, but it does kind of feel like, you know, they couldn't have afforded another scene. That's the feeling you get as you're watching it. They got what they needed. It feels like they were very frugal when they were making their movie. They got the job done, but you know, there is like little, even just on like a technical side, there's one scene in Night where they wanted to show something kind of, and it was really dark, and you could tell they didn't have like lights to do it. So there's a couple of shots that are really noisy because they've clearly just cranked up the gain on the camera. And it's a weird thing, because on the one hand, like, it does give it a little bit of a feel that it otherwise wouldn't have, because you have this almost, I don't know, it's almost like we're seeing something we're not supposed to be because someone's spying on the actress or something, right? Yeah. But I think the reason for it is simply that, it's a pitch black nighttime scene, and we just do not have the money for big lights to like light it like a bigger movie would. So we have to just crank up the gain. So these few shots look really bad on a technical level compared to everything else, but it does kind of feel weirdly intimate. It's got like almost like a documentary. In fact, I actually think that's true throughout, because they do it a couple times where you almost never see this in an actual movie, right? Typically, this is a very documentary thing, or a mockumentary thing that's trying to mimic a documentary, and that is the snap zoom into like a character's face. You don't usually see that in actual movies. It tends to be something that's seen as like it taking you out of the story, because like the logic behind it, I was always told, is that because a human eye can't literally do that, you don't do that in a movie, because your eyes can refocus. You can walk forwards, you can walk back, so you can move forward and back. You can look around, you can pan, you can do all the other things that a camera can do in some way. But the one thing you cannot do with your eyes is zoom in, right? It's the one thing the camera does that we can.
Fair. But yeah, that makes it feel, like you said, like someone's spying. It makes it feel like we're picking up someone's footage of someone who doesn't know that rule, someone who is that amateurish and is just like zooming because they want to see something better.
Yeah. And to be fair, it never feels like an accident, or like, they're doing this because they don't know the rules of filmmaking. It feels like an intentional choice, because they want to feel. I don't think this was a a flub on their part.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I looked into the director a little bit. He barely has anything to his name, at least not listed here.
I was looking just before as well. He had a movie a couple of years later, and he had one in like 2021. And they are both listed as sci-fi, so we might get to them at some point.
Yeah, perhaps. I feel like this is, I mean, as much as he's the director and all that, based off of the tone and all that, and how much it feels like it's carrying over to OA, I feel like this is much more of Brit Marling's child rather than the director itself.
It does feel that way. I don't know if, looking at his credits, it doesn't seem like this director was that involved in the other projects she worked on, so that is kind of interesting to sort of see how much it became her movie, perhaps, at least in hindsight, just because it feels so, like, you can see the thread going from this to the OA. And I would say that between all the things she's done, like, I think the OA is my favorite. And then this, and then Murder at the End of the World would be underneath. And they all have something to offer. They all have something where I feel sad. I feel like I'm seeing like a filmmaker's voice as I watch the movie. It feels like I'm seeing an artist do something that's not perfect, and it's not like, and I'm not saying it's a work of art in like some sort of like cherish it kind of way, but just I don't feel like I'm watching a product by Disney or something like that. I'm not watching like some cookie cutter studio movie that's like hitting the typical plot beats. It's a little bit messy. It's a little bit rough around the edges. It's got like a bit of a rawness and human emotion to it, and that actually makes it more interesting as I watch it, because it kind of feels like I'm watching people trying to do something, and so there's like a charm to some of its deficiencies, if you will.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it feels like a Searchlight sort of movie. It feels like that sort of thing where it's given this massively long leash for them to be able to do something, and other films, the other stuff coming out from Fox or Disney, depending on when we're talking, is what's subsidizing the ability for this to exist. It's literally existing for the sake of, I have a message that may not be as cookie cutter and studio approved as all the other stuff.
Yeah. Also, I want to mention, so she has a family, obviously. She's got parents, she's got a brother. I just want to mention the actor who plays the brother, who when I first saw this, wouldn't have recognized because I hadn't seen him in anything else yet. But I did recognize him watching it this time. This brother character is played by the actor who was the Penguin on the Gotham TV show.
Yep.
That felt weird.
It took me a second, because like I knew I recognized him, and I think it wasn't until like he really spoke a few times I'm like, oh, okay, that's that guy there. I've also seen him there was a movie called Accepted, which was like a stoner comedy starring Justin Long back in the day. He just plays the same character every time. Like, I just have to assume this is how the guy is.
Yeah, I don't think he's very good, I think when I was talking about some side characters not being good performance-wise, he was the one that was like the very first couple of lines he says when we first meet him when she gets out of prison near the start, and he's like, so did you have a gang inside? And just the way he phrases it, I'm like, you know what? It's an indie movie. I get that you have to work with what you've got, but I don't think he's very good.
I'll be honest, and I don't know if this is even like okay to say, I thought they were doing a subplot where like this kid is heavily on the autistic spectrum, and like he doesn't know like appropriate questions or anything like that, just based off that first scene. But then later on they do a scene where like, oh, he got accepted to this like college and like he did all this stuff, and I'm like, oh no, okay, he's just a regular dude. That makes it feel weirder in a way that he's being this kind of actor. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't think he's very good. His delivery was actively making the lines feel worse. So luckily he's only in a couple of scenes, but like it stuck out to me, especially that first time he spoke. So music's very appropriate for the film. It's very kind of laid back for the most part. There is a little bit of pulsing in the opening titles, but for the most part it's very kind of going right back to that word ethereal. It's a bit of piano, a little bit of strings here or there. It definitely fits the tone of what they're going for. I'll say. Yeah, so. Absolutely. I mean, it feels indie-ish in that we don't have a full orchestral score or anything like that. It feels very stripped back, but it works for what the movie needs.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I think other than that, we probably would do what again? It's spoilers and start digging into it. So I'll just say spoilers for Another Earth, and I also want to say how easy it is to accidentally say After Earth, which is a movie I've not seen, by the way, but it's that very, very badly reviewed Will Smith movie that M. Night Shyamalan directed. And it was Will Smith and his son. Now, unfortunately, it is science fiction, so at some point, we are going to have to endure it, but...
All right, I'm going to go on our spreadsheet, go down to 2032 and just pencil it in.
Nah, maybe 2042. There's no rush.
All right. Yeah, we can hold off. There's no need to rush.
No rush. Maybe when like Shyamalan and Will Smith have both died. Maybe that's the time we finally break that one out.
Let's wait until Jaden's gone too. We don't need to rush.
He's younger than us. That might be a little bit optimistic.
Yeah.
Unless he has a very, very bad accident at some point.
I'm trying to see when it takes place. Maybe we can wait until that happens. The 31st century? Yeah, I can wait till then. That's fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it's really far in the future, given the premise of the whole movie.
Whatever, that's fine.
Anyway, spoilers for Another Earth. You have been warned, so we will get into it. You mentioned the Jupiter photo at the start. I actually did like how they presented this, which is, she just shows the photograph, right? And her narration's like, oh, this was a photograph from Voyager. You know what reference I was making there.
I know.
So she's like, here's the photo. It's very beautiful, but it's nothing special until you play all the images it got in quick succession, and then you have kind of almost like an animated visual of Jupiter moving and all the clouds swarming and all that. And I'm like, okay, you know what? This is both very beautiful. It's kind of mesmerizing, like she said, but also feels, you know, that indie kind of roughness to it, because it is just a series of images being played over and over again. It kind of like set you up exactly for the tone of the movie. I felt this little opening.
Absolutely. So. It was, like we said, it's that ethereal feeling, and it's also overlaid with the I think it's immediately after that where we basically get the origin story, and we show, you know, she was a young student, she was out partying, doing whatever. And
it's the day she got accepted to MIT, so she's just sort of at the end of her high school career. MIT is obviously a big deal, you know. It's one of them, and I've heard of it, you know. So it means it's probably a pretty notable school to get into.
Yeah, it's like top. Well, if you're talking like technological and science, it's probably like the number one.
Yeah,
if we're talking in that front. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're studying like literature, you probably go to like Oxford or something, I don't know.
Right, like Yale or whatever.
Yeah. But you know, so obviously it's a big deal. And that's also the first hint that she is actually into astronomy. She's into space. We see when she goes to her bedroom later, she has like, you know, globes and stuff up and whatever else. And it also says something up for the ending as well, actually, which we'll get to when we eventually get there. But the whole thing here is, though, she's out, she's drinking, she's with friends, she's having a good time, she's driving home, which she shouldn't be, because she's definitely been drinking, but she hears on the radio that, you know, scientists, astronomers have found something in the skies, possibly another planet that could sustain life. So they don't know it's another Earth yet, they're just saying another planet, but you know, they say, hey, you can look up and see it. It's like a little, you know, pale blue dot, which Earth has been described that way from space before. And she looks up and she's looking at it. So this is actually what is effectively distracting her and causes the accident. Although it doesn't immediately have, it sort of does like a bit of a time jump back where we actually see the character of John and his family. We see that his wife's pregnant. There's a little boy in the back seat. They're having a happy time. And, you know, we just get this bird's eye view of her car coming in, hitting their car. Which, to be fair, for the level of budget this movie's got, I thought this actually looked good.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I was debating back and forth. Is this special effects, or is this something where they actually crash the cars? I'm coming down on special effects, but it looks good. It's enough to make me do a double take.
Yeah. So, and we just kind of like, we see her being a little disorientated looking at the other car, but then it very quickly says 4 years later, she's getting out of jail, or maybe technically juvie, because she was a minor when she went in. Maybe she transitioned to regular prison. I don't know how it works, but
well, I think she was tried as an adult.
Okay. Considering
that it was end of high school, she was going into college, and I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to stay in juvie until you're like 22 in this case.
Yeah, that's fair. So, you know, she's getting out, and it's all very sad. But because of the 4 year time jump, though, it's also a nice amount of time where it's believable. There's a lot more stuff happening with this other planet in the sky. You know, times past, people have been looking at it very closely for years. and they're like, oh, it looks like it's a blue planet. It looks like Earth, and it's all playing on the news as she's getting released from jail. And they very intentionally, she's very quiet. She's quiet. I mean, I think she probably goes like half an hour without saying anything, except maybe the employment office is maybe the one scene I can think of early on where she talks.
Yeah, I can't think of anything before that point. It's very much just getting to know the current status quo of her, like how is her family treating her, and it's like you said, the brother is poking fun at her, but it seems like there's just this cautious, like, let's not bring it up. Let's just let her be over there, and we're not going to interfere with her.
Yeah, there's a lot of moment, actually. It's probably the other... There's like 3 scenes with the brother. One in the car when they pick her up. There's one later on, but the other one is a dinner where they're celebrating that he's been accepted to whatever college. And like, oh, pour out some cider, and they're giving him some. And then the mum goes to pour in her glass, and she does pour it in, but there's a little moment where the dad glances over like, oh, should she be drinking?
Yeah.
And like, and part of me thought, look, I get the concern, but she's also clearly not allowed to drive. So I mean, it's not like that's going to happen again. Because the first thing we see like the day after she's out is she's on a bus. It's like, yeah, she, presumably she's not allowed to, at least for years. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, she's probably had her license suspended. She's definitely not allowed to use it.
So it's like, okay, right, we're setting up that she has this very somber existence. She's sort of sleepwalking through life, not really sure how to speak to people. She had this future at MIT. She was going to go there. She was into space. She was going to do all this stuff. She had all these hopes and dreams. But instead, it's like, well, you're a felon now, so you go to the job center, and she's like, I don't want to talk to people. Well, janitor then? Does that sound good? And that she ends up working at a school.
Yeah, no, they I think the work person even offers her, like, we have this like job opening, like that would be great for you. You could use your mind and all that. And she's like, no, I want to hold back. I'm not ready to talk to people yet. And obviously it has its own implications for the story, but I think it does a great job for the character development to show her level of guilt here. It's not something where like, she spent 4 years, she's ready to come out, get going again or whatever. Like she's still processing things even this far afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think the movie does a good job of making it clear that, like, she's clearly not an evil person. This has affected her. What's happened, it's affected her that she is responsible for the death of a woman and child, and is struggling with that, and is,
Yeah. And that's the other bit during this opening sequence is that she basically does a Google search. She knows the name of the guy, and turns out that the wife, unborn child, and born child all died, but he was in a coma, and he also is like just waking up.
Well, something prompts that though. She didn't just do it, oh,
that's right,
randomly.
That's right. Yeah, that happened before.
She actually walks to the spot of the accident. It's right next to the beach, and there's this little walkway, so it's very recognizable. You can sort of tell we're at this crossing very easily. And she walks there maybe after work or whatever it is, and she's looking around. And as she's walking away, she hears a car pull up, and it's the dad, it's John, right? And he gets out and puts like his son's toy next to the lamppost where they died, and she's kind of watching from a distance, and it's all shaky and it's all very kind of like emotional, and that's what prompts her to look into who he is when she gets out. And the movie makes it clear later on, which is going to be important because they're going to meet each other, obviously, is that he never knew who the other driver was because she was a minor, and that was more protected because of that. Which, again, I don't know how accurate that is in the US system, but it sounds plausible enough that I'm happy to roll with it.
Yeah. I mean, there's sealed files, there's stuff like that, but it's... I have a feeling that when it comes down to like the person who was the victim of the crime trying to find out about it, there are all these safeguards in place that would make it like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, it'd probably be a little bit different if it was... I mean, obviously it depends on the crime, I assume, because in this case, it's not like it was a premeditated murder or anything like that. It's not...
Yeah.
This is something where, like, you don't want
She's
to give...
She's charged for manslaughter, not for murder.
Yeah. And even he later on admits that he kind of, like, didn't want to know who it was anyway. Like, he asked his brother to look at the files and stuff because he was scared of what he might do to this person if he ever found them, because
as he's saying this to her,
to her,
oh, okay,
it's this is a little bit awkward. So, and meanwhile, there's a whole thing going on that the brother mentioned, that there's a competition, like some billionaire is putting a competition together.
Not Richard Branson.
He's put a competition to win a chance to fly to the other planet, to the other Earth. And it's going to be the first time they go. And basically, there's going to be other people on it as well, of course. But like the idea is that he's opened up like, I don't know, like 5 public chairs.
Mm-hmm.
The idea being that, I want some regular people to go as well. So there's a competition, and all you have to do to enter the competition is to like go into the website and do a little 500-word like essay explaining why you should go. Right, just a little bit of convincing. And she almost starts typing at one point, and she puts the laptop away, and she's like, "No, I'm not doing it." Like she backs away, and later on she'll come back and do it, and we'll get to that in a bit. But I think all of this early stuff does a really good job of showing just how isolated and alone she feels. Like she feels that she can't talk to her parents. She's feeling disconnected from her brother, obviously. She's not really talking to people she works with. Like she's just sitting quietly having lunch with the one old guy kind of thing.
There's a sequence where she's out and about and she comes across someone from her high school, and he recognized her and just like, "Oh, hey, how's it going? You were like super intelligent. I just got this cool new job, and here's my fiance or wife or girlfriend or whatever. Like, check it out."
Yeah.
And then she's like, yeah, I'm working at school. And she's like, "Oh, well, what are you teaching?" And she's like, "I clean." And he's like, "Neat."
Yeah, he tries
I gotta go.
Yeah, he tries to dress up by saying, "Oh, that's therapeutic," and I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, just I don't know. Like honestly, I don't know if there was any bringing it back after the assumption she was a teacher, because no matter what, it's going to feel like shit when she has to explain she's not. But like that was definitely not the right thing to say. Like that was definitely the wrong path.
I mean, yeah, he look, if there's a little dialogue box popping up, he definitely picked the worst option. But I'm also going to put this a little on her by saying I work down at the school. Like, the implication there is pretty obvious that you teach.
Yeah, but I understand why she said it like that, because she is embarrassed.
Yeah, she's ashamed. You don't want to push it. You don't want to be like, all right, let's leave it there.
She wants to leave it vague. But it's a really sad scene, though, because she basically, like, decides she maybe wants some gummy bears, and she picks it up, and the way it's shot is like, oh, this is like a magical item she's picked up. She's like, oh, I'm going to treat myself to some gummy bears. I don't deserve happiness anymore. I deserve treats. In fact, one of my favorite little moments when she gets back home after the prison is she goes into her bedroom and she just starts looking through like some of her old glittery makeup that's been sitting there for 4 years, and it's just kind of like, you just get the sense, and it's all in the performance and the directing, but it's like, oh yeah, this shit used to matter to me. Like I like nothing. Yeah. Like the thought of like putting on makeup and like I don't know, dressing up for anything just seems so alien now at this point. Like none of this shit matters.
And then I love the set dressing touch that she's got, like on top of her dresser, she's got like tons of trophies as well. And of course, it's that idea of she got into MIT. She had this promising life, and it's just none of that matters. All that's a completely different person now.
Yeah, and then she basically can't sleep in her bed, so she puts like the mattress on the floor and puts like a photograph of like, I don't know, the galaxy or whatever it is, like on the... I think
it's a Horsehead Nebula, if I remember correctly.
Oh, very good. But she puts it up on like the ceiling. It's got like an angle on the ceiling, and she sits that there, and that's what she lies looking at. It's a really prominent character beat, because towards the end of the film, where she's arguably gotten to a better place, you see that she has got a bed set up again. She's putting flowers in a vase. Like she's kind of starting to move on and like accept little happiness, like in very small minor ways. But early on, she's not willing to be happy about anything. She couldn't even let herself have gummy bears. She put them down and walked out the store because she couldn't stand being in line behind this guy she felt embarrassed by talking to anymore. So she's not allowed nice things, and that's her own doing. She doesn't think she deserves nice things early on in the film.
Then there's the immediately after she looks up and finds out that this guy came out of his coma somewhat recently. We get that grainy sequence you were talking about.
Well, she goes to the house. She finds his address. And that's there because he teaches music. He's a music professor, but he also does private lessons. So there is actually contact information on his website. And she goes to the house, and she just like looks in the window and just sees what he looks like. And he's sitting there. He's clearly been drinking. Everything's a mess. He looks just as miserable, arguably way more miserable than even she does. And yeah, this prompts effectively a suicide attempt, where she walks out onto the snow, and she just takes off her clothes and just lies there in the snow, looking up at space. And We get a snap cut to her in like a sort of thermal blanket, like at a
Space
hospital,
blanket.
and like it's like, okay, obviously someone found her and like called an ambulance or whatever. And I like the detail afterwards that she had little bandages on all her fingers. This idea she got frostbite.
Yeah.
Just a simple little thing, but it's actually this that prompts her to write the essay, or I mean essay's a bit of a strong word for 500 words, but you know what I mean.
Nowadays, the kids growing up in school with ChatGPT, yeah, that's a lot. How dare they?
I mean, sure, but when I saw this, I was actually was I just before I started uni? I think I might have just been before actually.
2011 is when I graduated high school. So
yeah, well, I had a couple of like off years before I started university, but
when Americans have an off year, they go and explore Europe. Were you backpacking through America?
No, I was not.
Oh, okay.
No. I didn't want to run into Bigfoot, get shot by hillbillies, or I can't think of a third stereotype to throw in, but yeah.
You drink yourself to death on a single large Coke.
There you go. There's another one. So this, like, I mean, I think the scene is very effective though. Like her going out there again, it feels very kind of like she's just given up and she just is going to let herself die. Because that's the thing. It's not like I'm jumping off a bridge or shooting myself or anything like that. It's that I'm just going to lay down in the cold and just wait for death. Like that's it's very sad.
It's continuing on this idea of passivity, this idea of like just letting things happen. So,
but yeah, this does prompt her to just say, F it, I'm going to write the essay. And it kind of becomes, here, this is where the other Earth starts to become like the idea of an escape, the idea of my life is so screwed up here. If I can go there, maybe I get a fresh start. Maybe, no one knows what I did. I won't have this record anymore. I won't have to look at my parents who know what I did anymore and like see their like shame in their eyes that I kind of messed up my life or whatever. I don't have to be around this man whose life I ruined. Like this represents an escape, and it's hard to remember exactly where all the little nuggets about the other Earth come in over, because every so often you get like a little news bit in the background or a little bit here or there. So it's hard to remember exactly where we were at this point in terms of what they knew. But
I think when she comes out of prison, they definitively were like, we have not made contact. We haven't talked to anyone there, but like we've zoomed in real close and it's a perfect copy. Like they have cities where we have cities. They have continents where we have continents. Like it is absolutely Earth again, and it's scarily similar.
Yeah. So it's like, this gets her thinking. I guess that's what really motivates her, is the idea that she can get to a second Earth that's just not with her history. Now, of course, this is before the idea that there's copies of all the people on the other Earth. Right. That's not come up yet, but that's where her mind is, and she writes this essay about how when people were like, sailing to the west of the planet and they thought that they would fall off the edge, all those explorers for the most part on those ships weren't like scientists and millionaires and pioneers. It was the riffraff of society. It was the people who didn't have any other options. It was criminals, it was this, it was that, who were on those ships. So as a felon, I don't really have a whole lot of options for things. I'm not a good applicant for almost anything. But maybe I'm a good applicant for this. Yeah. That's what I say.
I look, to be fair, making the emotional argument and saying that, I'm a felon, ex-con, like, I have all that. But then her also having the backstory of being accepted to MIT and like having the intelligence there, it's kind of the best of both worlds, to be honest. It's like, no, yeah, absolutely, we get this like headline that you get this, but you're also capable in your own right.
And that's it. She submits it, and then that's it. Laptop closes, and it's not like, we're sitting around waiting for the response. The movie sort of goes on, but like this idea of her trying to do the right thing comes into it, where, and she admits this later, that the intention up front was to apologize in some way, like however you could make an apology. But she goes back to John's house. She knocks on the door. And he answers, and he's obviously very sleepy and disgruntled, and he's not really taking care of himself or anything like that. But when she's about to say who she is, she flakes. She doesn't have the balls to actually say why she's there. She backs down and makes up an excuse saying, I'm from this cleaning company. We're doing a trial like offer, like, and at first he shoos her away, but then obviously he walks back into his house and sees what it looks like and goes, you know what, actually maybe a free cleaning session would be good.
Totally free? You definitely, all right, come on in, start cleaning.
Yeah, the way he said that made me think he really was like, he couldn't afford it, but then obviously he does like hire her as an actual cleaner afterwards, so clearly he could, but he just really liked the idea of that first free taste.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way the movie treats it, where obviously there are problems with her story immediately. Like, she walks in and he's like, all right, so this is a free trial, where's your cleaning supplies? And she's like, first one's usually just a consultation, not really a actual clean itself. And he's like, all right, well, would you mind anyway? And she's like, that's fine. And then I think she just threw out a name as well. I think it was like Maids in Haven or something like that.
Maid in Haven.
Like, oh, yeah. And it's like, oh, so you're based in New Haven. Like, that's a while away. Why are you all the way out here? And she's like, competition, trying to edge in, trying to do what we can. So she's fast on her feet, but at the same time, they're not shying away from the fact of it was a very hastily made up story.
Yeah, and we see that she has to take the train to get here, so it sounds like she is, and later on when he drives her home, it's not like she's in a different place than he's expecting. So I think she said something that is based in her hometown, so that
it's probably a cleaning service that she's seen around. It's probably something from the area.
Yeah, so that's the setup of where we're going for like a lot of the movie now, which is her going to his place and cleaning, awkwardly sort of being around while he's around. A prominent moment kind of early on is him noticing her looking at his telescope that he's got in the attic when she's cleaning. He kind of knows she's got an interest in that, and that ends up being kind of this branch where when he decides that he wants to try and not just be this weird quiet dude who's just always around, he brings his telescope down at one point and sort of offers a look. And sure enough, when she looks through it, and she's reluctant at first, but when she does, what she sees when they're looking at the other Earth is they basically see what I assume is meant to be the same coast that they're on. It's like the east coast of America. So it's like, okay, right, so we're doing this. He's put out this little olive branch to try and like form some kind of, and it's not even like I think he's looking for a romantic connection here. I think he's just trying to not be like what he's been. He's trying to open up to someone.
He's been absolutely depressed and a shut-in and all that, and it's just a matter of, okay, here's someone who has entered my life. I can at least be kind, and I can at least try to build like a sort of friendship here.
Yeah, and it kind of like, the other Earth kind of represents different things for both of them. For her, it's a potential escape from the miserable life she's created for herself. But for him, especially when she brings it up later about entering the competition, his attitude towards it is very, that's stupid. Like, why would you want to go there? For him, it kind of represents more the idea of moving on from what he's lost. And like, he's kind of stuck in this place where he's too scared to move on to anything. So it's kind of interesting how it kind of represents a negative thing for her in a lot of ways, but a positive thing for him in the end. But we'll get to kind of where they really pay that off later.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing where they have a conversation at one point where it's, what if there were a duplicate over there, because we get the actual first contact some point before this. If there's a duplicate over there, what would you say to your other self? And I think he basically, I can't remember exactly what he says, but it's like joking. It's not something where like he's taking it super seriously. And she comes out with like, better luck next time. Like basically just saying a thing of like, yeah, life sucks, doesn't it? But at least we can both be that together. We can both say that we like have gone through these shitty things together. And then he's like, seriously? Like, why would you say something like that? And she's like, no, I mean, more than likely I'd just be struck silent, like seeing yourself. Which
is good foreshadowing, actually, for the end of the movie. I really noticed that line when I was watching it this time, knowing where it was going to go. Yeah, let's talk about the first contact, actually. We can go back to the relationship in a bit, but because there's a bunch of sequences, like we said, where we hear details. Okay, it's a copy of Earth. They seem to have landmass in the same places, cities in the same places. Okay, but there's a scene where she comes in at one point, and her family are all watching like this broadcast of some politician, maybe, or maybe a scientist.
It's the director of SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
Yeah, I'll just say someone from NASA, whatever. So she's like got a microphone, and there's like obviously static, and they're clearly trying to reach out and communicate with the other Earth. It's like, my name is so and so. I am calling from the planet Earth. Blah blah blah. Does anyone read me? And and you can nitpick this if you want, because you could be like, well, to be fair, I suppose once you see they've got the exact same cities in the same place, maybe you would expect them to speak the same language, but you could maybe say, are you expecting English back? Because you may not get that.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I want to nitpick this scene, so as they're moving it forward, as they're doing whatever, another voice answers on the other side. It sounds identical. It sounds like her,
yeah.
But it is jarbled a little bit. It's got a little bit of static. But as they continue the conversation, they start asking each other questions, very personal questions. Starts off with like, what's your birthday? Where were you born? And then they say like, I went to a fair once and I got this very specific toy. What was it? And like, they both know, like she writes it down on a piece of paper to show the camera before the other person says it. And so it's clear that we have duplicates. They all share the same memories, the same lives up to that point. But my thought process was, what's to say this isn't essentially the equivalent of like an alien mimic? Like that, like, oh, they see the planet, they mimic the planet. They hear a voice, they can like read a mind or something like that and mimic that. Obviously, it doesn't go down that path, and I don't think it was ever intended to hint at that. But in a different sci-fi movie, I think that would have been the like, oh no, the horrible reveal that it was all just fake the whole time.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's an expectation thing. I think if you're thinking that from that scene seriously, and I'm not saying you were, but if you think that seriously from that scene where you start thinking about aliens mimicking humans, I think you're just not reading the tone of the movie correctly. I think the movie is making it clear that this is just genuinely being presented, and it's not something that's supposed to be read into in that way.
No, it's definitely something where a more hard sci-fi film, something that takes the actual possibilities of it, I think they would explore that path and like do tests to prove that it isn't. That
would be a thriller though at that point, because you'd be like paranoid, you'd be tense, you'd be like, oh, they are what they say they are. But this is like, the way it's presented is very clearly just, no, this is like, we're discovering this as we go on, and it sounds like, there's duplicates of everyone up there. And that, of course, changes the game again for how we're all thinking about it and how she's thinking about it, because she's looking up now thinking, oh, there's another me up there, you know. And because at one point they say, oh, what do you think, you know, if we were up there, what do you think they're doing? You're like, I wonder if I'm cleaning your house. Maybe.
He gets a kick out of that.
So to go back to the relationship, it progresses, and then he sort of takes some more olive branching where he's ordered food one time when she's over cleaning, and he puts a plate out for himself, and he's carrying it into the other room, and then he kind of turns like halfway there, and he's like, hey, if you want to join me, you can grab a plate. So she does. Now, I did not remember a pivotal scene involving the Nintendo Wii, but here it is.
There's nothing that bonds people more together than fighting each other in Wii boxing.
Yes, Wii Sports, the boxing game. You know, it works for what it is though, because it's like, obviously it's something for them to do to sort of like the barrier to come down a little bit, because at first when she's like, I'll play too, and she basically doesn't like hit back, she just kind of keeps blocking, and he's like, you have to hit back, which is, it kind of works as a metaphor for her like not reaching out. So it's like, okay, that's fine.
I love this bit though, because like he shows like you got to put up your hands, and like, you know, that's how you block, and then you like jab to do the punches, and she puts up the block. But like, you know that thing in 90s and like early 2000s where like the parent picks up the controller and is like tilting it back and forth, and the kid's like, it doesn't do anything, you just press the buttons, and they like laugh about it. The Wii is the literal one console where that actually does something, where that is actually a thing. And yet when she's doing her ducking and dodging, she's holding it completely still and just moving her head around. And I'm like, you still managed to screw it up.
Yeah, but I don't think that's like a screw up on the filmmaking or her acting. No. I think that's something that someone who, not even someone who hasn't played it, I feel like in the same way that when I play a racing game, sometimes I find my head tilting, right? Yeah. It's just a natural thing that happens when you're playing.
It's a natural response.
Yeah.
But like, I was just thinking like, that's the one time that like if you tilted the controllers back and forth, that would actually do something, and they're still managing to do it the weird way. And I know it's just a normal response, but I just found it funny.
And it also works for the character, because this idea that she's too timid and she's not willing to engage. But then obviously the montage plays out and she does get more into it, and apparently she starts beating his ass at a certain point. So there's bonding. And then after all this, So they've had some lunch or dinner together. They've played some Nintendo Wii, which even when this was shot probably in 2010, we're quite late in the Wii's life by that point.
It came out 2006, but if you assume that she was in jail and he was in a coma, like...
Oh, true, it's new to them. Yeah. That's true. It's new and exciting to them. That's a very good point. All I was thinking was, it's only 2 years till the Wii U. The Wii U's right around the corner.
He's got a whole back catalog to go through before then.
Nintendo biggest ever failure is just like it's coming up. It's coming up, everyone.
Yep.
Well, that's not the Virtua Boy is probably their biggest failure.
We
know
don't
what
talk
I mean?
about the Virtual Boy. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Anyway, so he's like, hey, I'll give you a lift. It's cold outside. And like, no, she's like, I'll get a train. It's fine. Like, no, I'll take you. And there's just like this awkwardness to it because it's like, okay, he's going to know where she lives. Maybe her parents will see her getting dropped off by this guy and ask who he is, which is going to lead to explaining, because it's not going to be a long time before they realize, wait, you're seeing the man whose family died in that accident. That
well, I don't even think it's so much the parents thing. It's been established up to this point that he hasn't been very not open. He hasn't asked her about herself at all. So this idea that like, oh no, how much does he know about the person who killed his family? If he knows where I live, is that going to be like the floodgate that opens up everything else?
I mean, I think it's part of that. I think it's part of all just this idea of like admitting that she's even doing what she's doing because she knows in some fundamental way that it's wrong. And like it's weird. There's like a cringe element to it where you're actually really worried about when he's going to find out and how badly he's going to react to it when he finds out. That's like a part of it.
To be fair, there is a section, I think it's before like the second meeting, after he's hired her, but before she is fully committed, where like you see her in her room practicing, saying like, there's something I need to tell you, like this is who I am, blah, blah, blah. And then the moment she goes and opens the door, he just kind of railroads her, just being like, oh, hey, I set up that telescope. Come on in, check it out. And it's like, all right, guess I won't do that today.
Yeah, it just kind of keeps getting pushed back. And as she describes later, that she felt like she was helping him a little bit by like trying to take care of that. Because he was kind of floundering in that regard. He was letting himself go in like every conceivable way. And she was like, oh, I felt like I was like making his life just a little bit better. And that was making her feel better, that she was doing something for him. So that's something she says much later. But so to your point, though, the end of this sequence when she's getting out the car, he's like, oh, you know what? My memory's not what it used to be. I've forgotten your name. And then she's like, oh, I don't think I ever told you my name. And there is that moment of like, is she going to say her real name? Because maybe he'll recognize the name, right? And because at this point, he's not said he didn't know who the driver was. He's not. He knows it's some teenager who was drunk driving, but that's all he knows. And she says Rhoda, which, by the way, that is a weird ass name. Can I just? Yeah. I kept thinking Rhoda. Rona? What are you saying?
I mean, I haven't heard it personally, but I know people exist with that name.
Fair enough. This is the only person I've ever heard of with the name Rhoda. Fair enough. And it's not like it's a weird, like, stupid sounding name or anything. It's just, I've just never heard it. And it's close enough to two other names that I'm like, well, am I hearing that right? What is that? Right. Speak up. Yeah. So anyway, but she says her name and he's like, okay, well, good night, Rhoda. And she's like, okay, bye.
And it even does like the dramatic pause of like, she says like Rhoda, and then there's like a beat, and like the audience is sitting there like, he remembers that name from the trial, because we haven't revealed that the courts like sealed the documents at this point or anything like that. And it's like, because he remembers it, and then she's just like, all right, Rhoda, good night, and then drives off. It's like, oh god, don't tease like that.
Yeah, I think this is actually when she walks in and they're doing the first contact. I think this is right after this. That's when she walks in the house. So we've got all that going, and then they have like a negative interaction. It starts off fine. It's when I think they're talking about what they would say to their duplicates and whatnot. But
she gives that whole story about the cosmonaut.
Right, the tapping, yeah, because he's got a headache. Clearly, he's taking pills every day. It's an after effect, presumably, of his coma. He's still got some problems from that, and he's got this pounding headache. And she tells this story about a cosmonaut, the first man in space, who started hearing this tapping from inside the ship, and it was driving him nuts. And he was trying to figure it out, and it was just there no matter what he did. He was ripping out things, and still this tapping persisted. And he realized that he'd have to like learn to love the tapping. So he just kind of closed his eyes, accepted it for what it was, and then all of a sudden from that point on, it just sounded like music. It was just something that was like, it was the drum beat to a symphony or whatever. Yeah. And that makes him light up because he is actually a musician. So like that actually appeals to him, that analogy.
Yeah, but like it's great to see like that turn between the two of them, because from his viewpoint, obviously you have the idea of, you've been stuck in this negative cycle. You've been stuck in your family is dead and all that, but perhaps there's something you can get out of it, something that like you can turn this negative into a positive and see this as a more positive thing. And then from her viewpoint, she's kind of just describing herself in his life. Not from the viewpoint of you were in a negative loop because your parents died and you met me, but I'm the one who did this thing, but maybe you could still learn to like enjoy me being around.
Yeah. And it's also like probably the most emotive she's been at this point in the film, because she's smiling as she says that. She's getting really into telling the story. And it feels like, and it's also a story about a cosmonaut, which probably ties into this idea that she grew up loving space and loving the idea of space travel. So it feels like she's getting passionate about something for a moment because it's helping him. Like the one time she's allowing herself to be passionate about the thing she loves is when she's helping this person she feels guilty about. I don't know, like all of it's kind of aligning. The stars, if you will, are aligning in that way.
The planet in the sky is aligning.
But she made the mistake of washing something that belonged to his wife or his son, and he gets kind of mad and yells at her and tells her to get out. So she leaves, and it's kind of this awkward thing. However, like the next day or whatever, he shows up. His car's just outside her house, and she comes over and she's like, "Whoa, what are you doing here?" He's like, "Hey, can you come in the car? I want to talk. I want to apologize. I was, I've been a bit out of it, blah blah." And he
goes to apologize, but he like specifically says like, "I tried to get in form of contact with you by calling your work.
That's right.
They said they'd never heard of you." And she's like, management changes a lot." And he's like, "Is that why my checks haven't been cashed?" And she's like, "I've been paid. I don't know what to tell you. Weird."
Yeah, she kind of like fobs it off, and he just kind of brushes it aside because he's not really there for that. He's just kind of like, "Yeah, this is strange," but he's like, "Hey, come on, something I want to show you. If that's okay." And she's like, "Sure." And he takes her to like basically a room,
like an auditorium.
Yeah, auditorium, probably at the college that he taught at before, and plays her some music on a saw. He gets like a violin bow out, but it's a saw it's like a sci-fi kind of sound that he makes. And it, as she's like listening to this, and he's given this like private performance, she's like seeing images of astronauts in her head and space and like the hope. And it's this idea that for him, like what space is to her, music is to him, and they're kind of like merging a little bit here in a sense where his passion is driving her passion a little bit. And when they go back to his that night, they have sex. Like it becomes a proper romantic entanglement, which does feel a little bit awkward to the audience because we're like, "Oh God, like he's going to find out."
She still hasn't said it. Oh
yeah,
no,
this is really bad in a lot of ways. Even though I can see why they're forming a bond and a connection.
And then literally in the afterglow, as they are spooning together on the couch, he gets to be the little spoon. That's when he says,
to be fair,
all of the stuff.
This makes sense though, because the idea that he's opening up after they've had sex because he's feeling vulnerable and he wants to like, "Hey, I want to like say some things out loud that I've not said to anyone yet, and I'm choosing you because we're formed a bond. It's just that we know that it's awkward because we know she's responsible for everything that he went through."
She's sitting in silence, and he's just like, "Yeah, I never found out the person who murdered my entire family, and like I don't know what I would do to them, and like." I've just been so angry and so full of hate." And she doesn't respond. She doesn't move. And he's like, "You still there?" And she's like, just gives a little squeeze. And he's like, "All right, let me continue." And it's just so awkward and like feels so, but like intentionally. It's not like the filmmakers are failing at a moment here.
Oh,
it's
absolutely
supposed to feel this way.
Yeah. So it's like things seem to be in this weirdly happy, if not awkward, because there's a sort of ticking time clock underneath it kind of way. But she goes home like the next day or whatever, and her brother is like, "Hey, I know something. I've got information." Like, so do you know the sad part about this is that I actually do see a plot beat here that I kind of like. I just wish that the brother was a better actor and it was maybe just a touch better written. Is this idea that he felt abandoned by her because she never wrote him back? Because he says that, oh, write me back this time. So the implication being that she never wrote back when she was in jail. And I thought, oh, there's maybe an interesting story here that if the parents are still detached, you could have maybe told a story where the sibling actually does sort of reconnect with her over the course of the movie. They never go down that path, but it kind of felt like maybe they were just touching on it a little bit here in this scene.
Yeah, it's this... Because it feels heartfelt from the brother. It does feel like he's happy for her that she has this opportunity and is getting to do like her dream or whatever. And everything before this kind of just feels like he's a smarmy little like, oh yes, I'm succeeding where the older sisters failed. So obviously there's an arc there, but it just doesn't feel like it's fully realized.
Yeah, this doesn't focus on it, and I do think there was potential there if they wanted to flesh that out. But yeah, she got a phone call from the space agency people. And she goes in, she dials the number, and they put her through to the main millionaire man. And notably, he says to her that he was told when he was 15 that he was either going to end up in prison or be a millionaire. And he's very thankful it's the latter, but the line between those two is shockingly thin. So he sympathizes with her, and you've got a seat, you're going to Earth 2. My assistant will fill you in with details later. And it's like, okay, that's set up. She's won the competition. And this, further ideas this idea of themes and of the idea of like the path not taken. And honestly, like this is the inferior of the two movies. But I was realizing thematically that there's a little bit of what I like about coherence in this film. Okay. With the idea of like, the path taken and not taken, and when your life diverged between a split in the road kind of thing. So more on that later when we get to that, because we'll talk about the sci-fi element a lot at the end, I think. But
yeah,
she goes to John and says, hey, that competition I told you about, I won. And he puts on a brave face, even though he was against it before. He smiles, says, let's have a drink, let's celebrate, I'll make a fancy dinner. But when they sit down to eat the dinner, he just kind of suddenly says, please don't go. And she's like, what? It's like, please don't go. Like, we're on the verge of something good here. Please don't go. And she obviously starts to feel really guilty. And he pleads a couple of times, but then ultimately says, you know what? I'm going to tell you a story. And if you still don't want me to go after I've told you what I'm about to tell you, then I won't go. And she starts talking about her regret, about making a stupid choice, about being this special dinner life, and getting distracted.
She says it all in like third person, as if she's talking about someone else, but it's very obvious who it is.
Yeah, especially when she starts talking about, she came to apologize one day, but she got scared, she backed off and told a lie, and has been struggling to like tell the truth since or whatever. And he obviously gets what she's saying. And as expected, he gets upset and yells, get out, a bunch of times, and she does. So it's like, yeah, there was no other way this was going to go. It's not like he's going to be like, well, since I'm kind of falling in love now, I'm just going to forget the fact that you killed everyone I cared about before,
Yeah,
like
he's just sitting there like silently. She's like, is everything okay? He's like, I'm just trying to figure out, was the sex that good?
So... yeah, I mean, and that's kind of, and also during all this, and this is interspersed throughout, is the other janitor at the school, the old man, who this is the part of the movie to me that feels like we're a thoughtful indie movie. We're going to have something a little bit more like, we're going to have this wise blind man who's got a sad story to him that's going to influence the main character. This is the part that feels a little bit hokey to me, because it feels very of the, like I say, indie-rific type of movie, this little subplot.
Yeah, no, I get what you say. It feels... I can't tell if it feels tacked on or if it feels like cut to pieces, but it doesn't feel complete either way. Very much earlier on in the movie when, we said she's having lunch with this other janitor guy. At one point, he provides her advice of just like, go with the flow, accept your life, don't fight against like whatever. But then we get to this scene here where there's another janitor. She's questioning where the original one was. And he's like, oh, he put bleach in his eyes and ears. And he's like, he's okay. He's surviving. But like, he's blind and deaf now. And she asks why, because there was no hint of this happening. And he says, the other janitor talked about how he was seeing himself everywhere and he was tired of that. And then, yeah, we get a hospital visit where she just kind of silently, we don't get to hear much of it, but, you know, comforts him and interacts with him as best she can.
Yeah. And, you know, it's like, it's not terrible, but it does feel like it's maybe been a little try hard with this character. I mean, I think when I come back to that word indie-rific, it's kind of that thing where it's like, oh, this is going to make us seem thoughtful. This is going to make us seem like we're you know, if you're going to accuse the movie of being up its own ass, I think this is the subplot where you say it's maybe a little bit up its own ass.
See, I get where you're coming from with it, and I do agree, but I think that it's part of what I was saying before about how when we get the reveal that there are exact duplicates on this other Earth, that would shake the foundation of how many people view their life, and people would react in wildly different ways. And I feel like this is supposed to be playing on that. The idea that he sees himself everywhere, the fact that there's this going on. And it's what I want. It's what I want, more deeper exploration of how different people react to this. But it is just so minor in the grand scale of the plot that it feels like it's a nothing.
Yeah, I think if he was more fleshed out in an actual character, I could see it being something. As it is, it just kind of feels like he's meant to be this wise, mystical man who's kind of like a, forewarning where the path yours might lead if you don't, you know, change your tune a little bit, kind of thing.
Yeah. We literally just turn it into an Oracle-esque character. Yes. Like, oh, he's wise, but how can he be so wise if he cannot see?
But the big thing that happens towards the end, the big revelation about the other Earth, well, not even revelation, it's really just a theory, but she's watching on TV, and by this point it's public knowledge that she's got a ticket and she's been on the news, and there's press outside her house trying to talk to her, and the parents are pissed that she never told them, and it's only like, I think it's like later the same day, it's like that night she found out, so it's not even like she's had that much time, but they're kind of miffed that she didn't tell them, and they're like, wait, are you going? Are you actually leaving and going to another planet? And she's like, yeah, I think I may. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. She specifically says, like, I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure yet. And it's obvious she was going to talk to Burroughs, whether or not, how well he took it was going to be the defining feature of.
That's John, by the way. We've never once called him Burroughs.
I couldn't remember if it was John or not. I just had William Mapother in my head.
Yeah, but I'm just like, we've literally never called him by his last name once this entire review, so it felt worth mentioning that's who you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so they're a bit miffed about all this, but she sees on TV like that night, or maybe it's the next night or whatever, but there's like a talk show on, and they're talking about like some theories they've got about this other Earth, because you assume if this was obviously really happening, there'd be like constant TV shows talking about it, and you know, they'll have experts, they'll have philosophers on talking about it, scientists, all sorts of people. And this guy basically talks about how, it seems to be an identical copy of our Earth. However, when we became aware of each other and we all looked up in one direction to see this other planet in the sky, they all had to look in the other direction because we're on the other side of them to some extent. And it's like, the idea is that if this is a mirror world, then that moment shattered the mirror, and everything was identical up until that point, but from the moment we became aware of each other, that's the moment where things may have started to diverge and change. And this like gives Rhoda the idea where she runs over to John's house immediately, right? He runs to the train station, gets on the train, like makes this trek out there. He doesn't want to let her in, so she climbs in a window, and she gets into the house, and he actually grabs her quite, like, you know, strongly by the neck at first, and like, obviously he kind of pulls himself back, but she's like, there's this theory that when we became aware of each other, that's when things started to change. And the movie literally started, the reason why she was distracted on the road is because she was looking up at the other planet, which signifies that definitely was after the moment of things change. Arguably, what happened to his family was maybe the first thing that changed as a result of these two worlds becoming aware of each other. And she's like, I don't know, they might not be up there, but there's a chance that your wife and kids are on that other planet.
Yeah, it's the idea that, you know, in the shot that we saw, she drifted over into the left lane and hit the car head on. Whereas on the other world, maybe she drifted slightly off the road and she got like jumped back and took the wheel again, and so everything was fine. But regardless, the idea that well, when they say the synchronicity was changed at that point, that's where it all split up there. I like that from a story perspective, but obviously like it's the mysticism, it's the magical angle of it, because if you really try to boil down deep into like, well, shouldn't it have changed like at some much earlier point when like their like paths are like at some point in history, Jupiter was on our side of the sun and it wasn't on their side of the sun when something happened. Like there should have been something that would have changed between the two Earths earlier on, but you don't boil that into it.
Yeah, but that's getting into some things that the movie's not even interested. Like,
right?
Like, because like, why has it even appeared? That's never answered. It's never even really talked about, and it's just something you have to accept that for some reason we've become aware of each other.
And there is one thing that trivia-wise it brings up, is that the idea that if Earth, as close as they show it, showed up in our sky, our gravity would be going nuts.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
It'd be crazy. There was apparently a filmed scene where they were going to have like light little flower petals that were like coming off of trees that were just kind of floating, if not like moving upwards slightly to show that gravity was being changed. But they were like, let's not poke that bear. The rest of the story isn't messing with it. We'll just cut it out.
Yeah. Like, you have to accept that we're not doing the hard science fiction of like how would the atmosphere and like the physics be affected by another planet being this relatively close that you can see it this big in the sky. Like, you just have to just roll with it because it's not really about that side of it, and that's okay. Because because if anything, like while the visual is of an Earth in the sky and it's talking about another Earth, and I think it's actually after she's found out she won, where we get the big money shot of the movie where she walks out to the pier and the Earth's like right above her, like in the sky, and it's this, it's great visual. It's one of the posters of the movie. It looks great. It's a phenomenal shot. While that's the surface level thing, I actually, and it's fair to say that it's not really following any kind of like sciencey side of like what effect would this have. So effectively, is it really science fiction at that point? I think it is science fiction, but weirdly, the thing that makes it science fiction, other than just, the concept's still kind of sci-fi, to me is more the idea of the divergent, like, timeline kind of aspect to it, of, like, the paths changing. To me, that is just straight up science fiction, even if you decide the Earth part of it is just kind of mystical in a lot of ways. The other part of it, which is, we were in sync completely, and then we split. And then there's also the argument of, like, did this other world always exist, or did the Earth split in two at some point?
I will say there is a throwaway line from one of the scientists or something like that saying that, like, the planet, if there were a planet on the opposite side of the sun, we wouldn't know about it. If it kept like perfect time on the opposite side of the sun, we wouldn't know about it. So I think that's the explanation they use as to where it came from. But yeah, it's very much just a throwaway line.
Yeah, and I would say explanation's a very loose word there. I don't think they felt when they wrote this movie they ever had to explain it. I think it's like, we'll throw out some like ideas because it's fun to think about. It's fun to get the mind going, and because people would be talking about it. But I don't think they ever settled on this is why it happened, because it's not really important why it happened. It's just important the effect that it has.
It absolutely boils down to, like, they flipped a coin between alternate dimension, time travel, or a parallel Earth, and they just went with boom, parallel Earth. There you
go. So she leaves her ticket on the table for him, saying, "Hey, they might be up there. On you go." And this is a healthy kind of like section of the movie for her. As bad as all these scenes kind of feel because of all this truth coming out, is that she's finally admitted the truth, right? And when we do skip 4 months later, we see that she is. Or it's actually not 4 months later yet, but we see that she is, tidying up her room. She's putting flowers in. She's got a proper bed now. She seems more content. Like, her life is starting to, slowly, but starting to move forward. Like, she's not stuck in this tragedy that she was a part of anymore. And that goes back to, again, to that idea of me saying that this other Earth was an escape for her to run to, which would be her not facing her problems. Whereas by, telling him, being honest, and going through the pain of all this, she's done the right thing to a point, and she's able to now start to move forward. And for him, he wasn't willing to try, he wasn't willing to go out and go into the world. So going to the other Earth for him represents actually going out there and starting a new life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like metaphor wise it works. She sees him on the news at one point giving a little puff piece to the camera saying, oh, I'm excited but scared obviously, and who knows what I'll find up there. And we do a 4-month time jump, and Rhoda's just going home. It's been another normal day seemingly. She's just walking home, and the end of the movie is her like being startled by seeing something, turning around, and we're on her face, and then she slowly turns to look back at whatever startled her, and it reveals a second Rhoda. Now, I love this ending for multiple reasons. One, the idea that we don't see her the other one at first and then it's revealed is very much mimics the idea of the second Earth, and that's, it's only just been revealed to us. So it actually mimics that concept in itself. I love the idea that the second Rhoda looks better dressed. She's got a nice coat on. It seems like her life's going smoothly because this tragedy seemingly didn't happen on the other Earth. She did maybe go to MIT. Maybe it actually fits into what the millionaire said. Either would end up in prison or a millionaire. Maybe this Rhoda is either a millionaire or at least on the path to becoming a millionaire.
Yeah.
So I like that element to it. But yeah, this idea that this one had a reason to give up her ticket, but Rhoda 2, to give her a name, she didn't, because she didn't go through this tragedy. So she just and that's why I think setting up from the very start that she's into space, she cares about the idea of exploring and going out there. The idea that was part of her character anyway explains why Rhoda 2 would still want to get a ticket on that ship. Maybe she didn't have to win a competition on Earth 2. Maybe she just had the money, the power to get on there. Maybe she had friends in high places. Who knows?
She was the person in charge of the whole thing, I guess.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, maybe. So, no, I mean, I think this is a really interesting ending. And then just from like a allegory point of view, this idea that she, like, because she's finally done the right thing and is moving forward, she gets to actually confront the better version of herself and what she could be. So there's kind of like a symbolism element to it as well. Now, I think the thing that will come up when people talk about the end of this movie, and I've seen it whenever anyone does talk about the end of this movie, is like, well, is it really that much of a happy ending? Because when John goes to Earth 2, there's going to be a John 2 who's like, this is my family, go away, you loser. Like, like, I get that is a thing, and it's right. There will be a John 2, presumably on the other Earth, if you read it the way it's presented. But I never necessarily took it as like he's going over there to just be their husband and father, and like like that's it. It kind of felt like, no, he gets to go over there and get some closure by saying goodbye, seeing who his son's grown into 4 years later, what his little daughter's like now that she's been born, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's if you're reading it from a storyline, like the him taking the tickets and going out there, it was never about him regressing. He wasn't trying to go back in order to get his family back or whatever. It was always about moving forward and taking on a new chapter in his life and being this astronaut that goes out and explores the other planet. Yes, he gets the benefit of seeing his family, but I don't think it was ever going to be something where he tries to step in and be the new father figure.
Absolutely. So I think like it's a fair point to bring up, but I don't think it was this idea that he could just take them for his own and call it a day. So yeah, I mean, I like everything the ending's hitting at. Like, I think it kind of makes the movie in a lot of ways for me, is this ending where it feels like it just is poignant enough and gives you enough of that sci-fi kind of spice to like get your brain going and think about all the things that this means. And it's like, yeah, just because you didn't go to the other Earth didn't mean, because it's kind of funny to think about, well, if there wasn't a divergence, then if you both went, then you'd end up there and she'd have left. So you'd be like, right, I guess I'll just fill in her role. It's like a cosmic trading places.
Yeah, I have to assume this was always just like a meeting sort of thing. It's not a thing where they're like trying to infiltrate or anything like that. But yeah, it's I appreciate the ending. I think the ending is by far one of the more interesting points that it does with the movie, because it is, again, taking this concept and just like, okay, here it is. Here's this thing. Like, what does that mean? But it leaves us on that cliffhanger. It leaves us on that idea of we have to interpret what that means based off of everything we saw before. Where are we coming at this from? What does it mean, the fact that she is better dressed? What does it mean that the fact that she turns away first and like doesn't want to look at it immediately? obviously some things are just cinematographical choices, but like I think that this, in much the same way that I mentioned before, I watched someone gushing over the OA and the fact that the season 2 cliffhanger is the way it is. This is that same sort of thing where it leaves me with so many questions that don't feel like a fault on the filmmakers of not telling enough of the story. It's enough of the story being told where it lets us theorize and take this in different places that feel like an expansion of the story rather than filling in gaps.
And I think her turning away first makes sense. One, just because of the natural shock of seeing yourself. Like, I think anyone might react this way. But specifically for her in the story, this idea of, like, this ghost of what her life could have been has been, like, weighing over the entire movie. And, like, you know, you're just this now. You're a felon. You can only get these types of jobs now because you ruined your life. But now she actually is confronted with the version of herself that has the better life. And like, but she turns back to interact, and you know, we end just before they start speaking to each other to be like, okay, I'm ready to face this and kind of like maybe see where I can go.
The duplicate, the Earth 2 version, is like taking a step forward as it cuts. Like she's the one who's closing the gap there, which also has its own little significance and whatnot there. So no, I appreciate the ending. I appreciate all that. Even through talking through it here, you know, there's little things that you brought up that I wasn't exactly thinking of, but I do still feel like I would be more than okay with like a 2-hour version of this or an hour 45-minute version of this that just kind of expanded on, if we are doing this stuff of what does it mean that this other Earth is in the sky and how does it impact the way that we're viewing ourselves and stuff like that. I'd like to see that expanded on. I'd like to see, again, the janitor character. How did that work out? There's a couple people we passed on the street who are like doing the whole sandwich board conspiracy signs of like, we're all just thought forms of Earth 2 people. Like, I would have liked to seen that explored just a little bit more comparatively to, I'm not going to call it a rom-com, but just the way this romance is sort of building up here.
Yeah, I mean, where's the comedy in this rom-com? You like, why would you call it a rom-com?
Calling it just a romance always makes me think of like an 1800s like Pride and Prejudice sort of thing. I feel like romance is just the weird way to call it.
No, I mean, I wouldn't really call. I mean, there's romance in there, but it's really more just a drama. I would say.
Yeah, a drama tragedy. Yeah.
No, I mean, I could, there's definitely room to explore more of some of that stuff. I don't think I would want to be like doing like a wide view of it though. I don't think I'd want to be seeing a bunch of characters, but I could definitely see expanding it to like exploring the brother a little bit more. How's he reacting to it? How does it affect him? The janitor's another obvious one, but only people close to her. I wouldn't want to be cutting to like, you know, say characters that are not related or anything like that. It would all have to be people who are directly tied to her, so it still feels intimate and it still feels like just a very small pocket of the world. I never want this to turn into like, oh, we're going to cut to a family in Texas and then a family in France and like how everyone's
you don't
reacting.
Want the Deep Impact treatment.
No.
Yeah.
No. This is much better than Deep Impact. I'm just going to say it. So.
All right.
So no, I mean I still think this movie is very compelling, and I think that it is a bit of an acquired taste, like with how it approaches its topic and its ideas. I think, you know, if you are looking for something that is more of a hard science fiction film, it is not going to work for you. But I think if you like the type of storytelling that Brit Marling tends to be associated with, and this was my first taste of it, really, I'm sure. I don't know if she even did much before this.
I didn't see anything.
Then I think, you know, it's got a very specific voice to it, and if you vibe with that voice, I think there's a lot to get out of this. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I think it's perfect or that I don't think there's, you know, I mentioned the brother not being very good. I think the janitor plot feels like, you know, indie movie, we're up our own arse bullshit. But I think most of it works quite well, partly because I think Brit Marling is good at playing the types of roles that she tends to give herself. So she writes for the type of character that she can play, and she does that quite well. And the thinking and the visuals of, like, you know, every single time it cut to a shot of her walking like down the street and the second Earth is just there in the sky looming over her, of this, like the weight of it coming down on her because it represents like how she feels. Like, it is a constant thing throughout the movie. So it feels like, no, the idea of the second Earth was always there. I'm sure it started with that as like a concept, and then they built the drama around it. So it does feel integral to me. So I still quite like it a lot. I think that it's not going to be for everyone, and it definitely has some rough edges. I find some of those rough edges charming, but it's it is what it is. I think I didn't realize before I watched it again how much I was going to be thinking about coherence, and well, they're very different types of movies and how they're presented and whatnot. There's definitely a couple of similar themes in the idea of like an alternate path. I don't want to spoil coherence, so I'm being very vague, but
yeah. But even then, like even the structure and the production value of it, they're kind of on that same exact level where it feels like it's working within its budget. It's not something that has just a money funnel that's going to let it do whatever it wants.
And I will say, well, I think Coherence is the better movie overall. It's the more fun movie in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. I think visually, I would say this is the better looking movie. There's nothing in Coherence that looks like her standing there with the earth in the sky.
True, but I would say if you were saying before the hard science people, I think they would get a lot more out of Coherence.
Coherence is more on the rules and the mechanics of what's going on. This is more on the human characters. They focus on different elements for sure, but there's definitely a little bit of a parallel to be made there, even though they are very, very, very different in a lot of ways. All right, David, what are you rating Another Earth out of 10?
I feel like I made my mind up when I watched the movie, and I don't feel like it's really changed that much. So I will just say that this one, for me, just gets a flat 7. It's good. Mm-hmm. I recognize it as crossing that barrier into good, but I think with what I was hoping from the movie, the things it brought up and I don't feel like it fully explored. I can't give it much higher outside of that range. So flat 7 for me.
Yeah, I think I'm going a bit higher. I think for me it's an 8 out of 10. I think it does have faults. It's not this perfect, masterpiece of a film. It's got its rough edges, like I've said numerous times at this point. Mm-hmm. But there's something about the vibe and the atmosphere that this kind of movie creates when it's done. I hesitate to even say well, because sometimes it just doesn't click. If just the tone's just slightly off, just by like a fraction on either side, it can feel like it's just, it's trying too hard, or it's doing this, or it's doing that. And I think for a lot of people, they'll watch this and they'll feel that way about this. But for whatever reason, this is exactly threading that needle of the right amount of like optimism and like sense of wonder of what's out there on this other Earth, and how that ties into like her feeling of isolation and like just what she's going through. So and then some nice visuals and all that, and an ending that I think kind of hits well. I'm going to say 8 out of 10 for me. Okay, so there you go. That is Another Earth, and we'll be back next week with another movie. No, not funny.
No, I get it. I understand. Good job.
No, okay.
You did it.
Next week we will be looking at the film from the 70s based on the famous book. We'll be looking at Slaughterhouse 5. So that's what's coming up next time on the Atomic Cinema Experiment. Obviously, David does have a homework movie, which he'll get to in a second, but I'll just tell you before we get to that. If you want to support the Atomic Cinema Experiment and help keep it coming, and as well as the other shows we do at the Collector's Cut, go check out that as well if you haven't. We can be supported on Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, or via YouTube membership. You can get access to the bonus little ratings rundown segments we do, and every month we do a show called Extra Reels, where me and David review some of the worst movies ever made. Sometimes they're science fiction, even sometimes they're not. Just kind of depends. But you can go check out that and help keep the show coming. Obviously like, subscribe, all that usual stuff on YouTube, rate us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. But yes, every week on the show, unless he's slacking, like when we did Avatar 3, David goes back and watches a movie that we did in the show before he joined, so he can catch up and whatnot. David, what was this week's homework movie?
Oh, I slacked. I didn't do anything. No, okay. I did actually do one. It was weird. I was looking through, and I feel like this would have been the perfect time for me to do Coherence, because again, there was a little bit of carryover, but already did that one. So what I was looking for was something that felt lower budget. I was looking to try to tie it in with that. And
so you watched Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
Yes, the lowest budget movie I could imagine. You actually titled one of the old episodes you did with Tara, "Can blank outrun its budget?" And I was like, well, I guess that makes sense to me. I'll go ahead and do that.
For the record, I do not remember what movie I give that title on YouTube to, but go on.
It was 4 years ago when you uploaded it. I didn't expect you to. It is Fast Color.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember. Yep. Yeah.
So Fast Color, anyone who hasn't heard of it, it's kind of like a different take on like a superhero sort of movie. It's a woman who has some sort of power where she seemingly at the beginning can't control it, and she's causing like massive like earthquakes, sort of shaking and stuff like that. And then we get over the course of the movie more explanation of what it is as she's being chased by some people who theoretically want to exploit her and or control her. So it was a movie.
Oh.
I don't know. I was kind of going into it, expecting it to be lower budget than it was based off your title. It still felt like miles ahead of this movie. It felt like there was a lot more to it. They did a lot more. Obviously, it's a decade later. They had more easily available special effects, but it still felt like it was higher budget regardless. I think what got me about it was kind of the same sort of thing where it set up this idea, it set up this concept of like, okay, these people have powers and do this stuff. And then it just took the most boring possible story to accompany it with, oh, they're being hunted by these government agents and they're doing this stuff. And like, we get a bare bones explanation of what the powers actually do. And I was just, I don't know, I was always waiting for it to turn the corner and do something more interesting. And by the time the movie ended, it felt more like this was a movie setting up a TV show where they were going to do the interesting stuff on the TV show rather than the movie itself being interesting. So, yeah, I don't know. It's acting wise, it was fine. Special effects wise, it was good enough. It was fine. But like every single plot point just led me to wanting something cooler to come out of it. And they just never did get there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember much about the movie, but I do remember feeling like it just never like made a claim for what it was actually trying to be. It just kind of felt half-assed the entire time from a story perspective. It never, became something with a strong purpose or made me care enough about the characters to really get into like what it was doing. Which is a shame because I think that's a movie that I think was going for the ethereal kind of like hopeful vibe, and I think the story just completely doesn't work for it.
That's the thing. There's so many scenes in this where on paper I can see it written down and it's this big heartfelt emotional like, oh my god, I can't believe the character had to go through this, all this stuff. But then as it plays out on screen, you just have zero attachment. You just don't feel like anything is really attaching you to these characters. And so by the time you're done with the scene, you're like, all right, well, sucks they went through that, I guess.
Yeah, just very detached and honestly a little bit bored is all I remember being.
So, I mean, counteracting how bored I was, and then with it actually having some decent quality, like objectively, it looked well. It did some special effects very well there. I think I'm just going to even out at a 5. I don't think it's above that, below that. It's just straight down the middle.
That's fair. Well, sounds reasonable. I want you to know, by the way, that on stream recently, people have been trying to convince me into thinking of something for your homework once you're done with all the Old Ace episodes, so you still have homework.
I'm going to be doing this for like 3 more years. Why do people want me to keep doing it?
like making you watch like a sci-fi TV show that I've already done on the TV channel or something.
My God. I just have to go through the entirety of Trek, beginning to end.
And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like he's probably earned a stay of execution once he's done all the Old Ace episodes. But
Peter, I think that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
A stay of execution? I know, I'm so generous. I'm so
that I've earned it. That I actually did something worthwhile.
I you know what? I've always said this about myself. I'm so generous and humble and just
modest.
All around. Yes, just modesty's off the charts with me.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, that's the show, everyone. That's the Atomic Cinema Experiment. Let us know what you thought of Another Earth if you've seen it in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that usual stuff helps out a bunch. We'll see you next time for Slaughterhouse 5, but thank you very much once again for watching. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.